r/AskReddit by Redmond ETS. To people who have also worked with multimillionaires or billionaires, what is something different they do from ordinary people? One old money rich person treated me to a fancy meal and she was super polite and nice and tipped well. What struck me was the decisiveness and confidence that everyone there would cater to her, and they did. She wanted X dish that they didn't make that day, and they made it. The one that sticks with me was at the end she said, "I want a cappuccino with something. I want them to put a design on it. Like I've gotten cute cappuccinos in my life. It doesn't even cost extra. It never occurred to me to just ask for everything I want all the time." This was the same person that on a business trip hugged me after the flight. I did it, woman thorned. "Oh, was this your first time in economy?" And she goes, "No, flying commercial." Just so we all understand how rich. Hire a private chef for a casual Tuesday lunch with her girlfriends. $2,000, just like that. Have no fear when addressing anyone, no social barriers. I didn't realize that the act of driving is some peasant stuff till I met them. I work at a really fancy hotel, and this is correct. Super wealthy people don't drive themselves. They certainly don't ever have to park a car. They don't carry their own luggage. They don't clean. They don't make their own food. They don't even open the door for themselves. They automatically expect someone else to be doing all of the little things. They also get overly flustered and irritated at small inconveniences. I briefly worked for a guy who spontaneously decided to take about 8 of his favorite employees on his private jet for flight to Paris, just because he wanted to visit his favorite restaurant and wanted to go out drinking and didn't want to do it alone. So on about 2 hours notice he arranged an emergency business trip to get away from his wife, grabbed some guys from the office, and basically told them, "You're coming with me tonight and we'll all have a good time. You don't have a choice but you'll get paid for this." The restaurant, bars, and hotel they visited weren't super fancy, but they were still very nice, and the boss paid for everything, including paying the guys overtime wages because they were working. Randomly taking a private jet for a flight on such short notice must have cost at least $20,000 plus another 10 grand or so in additional expenses. The same guy also bought an airworthy Spitfire fighter plane from World War II just because he thought it was cool. He didn't have a pilot's license and had no intention of flying it, but he employed a bunch of people just to take care of the plane and fly it at various air shows. He did put his company name on the side of the plane, so I guess the excuse he used to justify the purchase was that the plane was a way of advertising his company. I worked for a billionaire who was an ordinary person. He stood in the line to use the copy machine just like the rest of us. He wore a suit and tie every day but never wore a belt. After working for him for about 10 years I finally asked him why he doesn't wear a belt. He said that his pants stayed up without one. Not wearing a belt is a sign of good tailoring. With more formal clothes in particular, bespoke and high-end trousers often don't even have belt loops. My son's friend when in elementary school, dad was one of the 2 founders of Capital One. Mom had a secretary for play dates. Dad would fly to London to watch Tottenham. Had a permanent seat. Their London house was next to J.K. Rowling's. You couldn't tell by the way they dressed or their cars. But their vacations were the big difference. The strange thing is that their son loved a mango juice sold maybe 10-15 minutes from their house. I always made sure we had some for mine. I sent it to him via Amazon occasionally. He managed time very differently than anyone I was used to. That is, our meeting with him began precisely on schedule, lasted 30 minutes, and there was no chit chat. Before this meeting we had a pre-meeting with his admin to discuss expectations. The admin explained that we had to be on time, no introductions, titles, just name, no small talk, no marketing, be prepared to answer technical and financial questions quickly and succinctly. For this latter, if there were numbers we had to know precisely which page of the material had the information. When the meeting took place we were brought in exactly to the second at the start time. Sat down and within 30 seconds he was asking us all manner of questions. I had to field technical questions that appeared to be asked not so much for whether my answer was right, but that I didn't hesitate. I also gained a healthy respect for my manager as he was sharp and answered quickly and accurately. I work with lots of millionaires and a few billionaires. Most work non-stop. There's no boundary between workday, holiday, weekend, etc. But there is also no boundary between friend, family, co-worker lots of times. It is easy to forget the cost of things when money is meaningless. When a 500 grand Ferrari is the financial equivalent to a gallon of milk for most families, then spending 20 grand on a party that includes private chefs, a bar staff, etc. is nothing. What happened recently was that someone mentioned there were a bunch of kids in MS who were getting trained at trade schools for jobs, but the certification exam was $350, so only 2 kids out of the 35 an hour pilot program got certified. It was hard for anyone in that room to understand how these families couldn't come up with $350 having a whole year to prepare. Most people in that room bill at $250 to $500 per hour if they work at all. 2 days ago, someone took me out to lunch and the bill was $250, but since it's Christmas season and the waitress was really great, he tipped $250. A different time, we went out for drinks and the bartender was one of those tell me what you like and I'll make you something. The lady goes to pay and just writes math in the tip line and put $500 on the total for what was less than 3 drinks a person for 4 of us. On the other hand, there are lots of times when someone says something completely off the wall elitist. I grew up incredibly poor and some of these people are 5th and 10th generation wealth. They grew up with maids and butlers and private planes and their great grandparents have buildings all over the United States named after them. One time one of them was talking about how she went to Walmart to people watch and never felt unsafe even though it was the black part of town. She tried to make some black friends because if she could befriend them then she could educate them on better financial decisions. It was such a condescending and racist approach we had to counsel her to never do that again. Another guy says things like the blacks will blank, and he thinks he's very woke. Aside from all that, there is a general loss of touch with what everyday people face. The loss of touch is what I've experienced. I have wealthy in-laws and my brother-in-law asked what my wife's ideal car would be. I said she'd love a Range Rover because who wouldn't, and he said why don't you just buy her one? What the hell? I'm not immune myself, but more tone deaf. I'm no millionaire, but we're doing pretty well. I saw someone ringing up ramen noodles and too loudly commented to my wife on how I used to do that. I can be such an idiot sometimes. I do consulting for public companies and work directly with CEOs and board members, so they're all multimillionaires, but only a couple in the 3 comma club. There is no demarcation between personal and professional time. We should set up a call, meaning vaguely next week, and they will respond with, I am free at 10 AM on Sunday while I'm at my kid's ski lesson. They ask a million questions. About every detail. This is the #1 personality trait I've noticed. The critical thinking is to the point where if you misspeak one word that is easily well understood, they will question you to be certain. I do think this is one of many factors that has made them successful. My aunt and uncle are self-made multi-millionaires. If you met them, you'd think they were well off, but nothing spectacular. In general, they are both very frugal. However, the 2 areas where they completely detach from ordinary life are vet bills for their animals. The example that most stands out in my mind is their last dog. He needed dialysis and no vet where we live could provide it. So they did their research and discovered that the best treatment in the country was available in London. A flat in Kew, I think, somewhere fairly central anyway, was rented for the 6 months the dog would need treatment for and my uncle would stay in it for 1 week a month while the dog had his treatment, then travel back home for the other 3 weeks. Legal help. Neighbors being pains in the backside? Send in the solicitor. Trying to organize a purchase or sale and it's taking too long? Pay the solicitor to fast track. Local council leaving traffic lights up for over a week after work has been completed? Cry havoc and let slip the solicitors of war. Years ago a friend of mine's dad was trying to sell his startup company and picked up an investor at the airport. He was proud of his classic Rolls Royce and noticed the investor looking around, playing with the air vents. So he said, "Is this your first time in a Rolls Royce?" The guy said no, but it was his first time in the front seat. One of my friends is going to be a billionaire soon. His father is dying and he's the sole heir to the family fortune. He already had access to it, but he chooses to live a middle-class life instead. It's important to him to teach his kids the value of hard work. So he is basically the exception. It's usually not the people that worked for the money that are the problem. It's their kids and those that inherit the wealth for having done nothing that are all screwed up. Glad to see your friend realizes this early. They say it takes 3 generations to blow it all. However, they also say that beyond 100 million, it's incredibly difficult to outspend the interest earned unless you are buying mega yachts and private jets regularly. I worked for a billionaire for a year. At first, it was great, because he made us feel he was in the trenches with us. I came to find out that he made fun of us. There was only 8 employees. For the salary he was paying us intended to throw people under the bus. It was one of the very few jobs that I gave less than 2 weeks notice and never looked back. I am so glad to be out of there. I worked with their children in a professional manner and feel bad for them. They lack empathy and basic social skills, and were just beasts to anyone they feel is outside their economic class. You would be surprised how much money gets spent on cover-ups, from sexual harassment to drug issues, because the parents are chasing dollars and ignoring their intended trophy kids. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.